Hi, Tom Pope from Community and Social Change Radio, um, here with Glenn Greenidge.
Hi there.
Um, we're exploring the meaning of community. What does community mean? Does it mean we or me? We have seen problems with the example of meism, NIMBY. Migrants come into the community and everyone is terrified. We see examples of the economic problems going back to 2008. The wealthy were saved with their banking interests. The average person was hurt with mortgages. Um, so we have extra problems. How does that affect personal survival?
Well, Tom, great commentary. I've got to say that the personal survival, especially um, when you come from scarcity, you pit people against each other, and so now I'm competing for what I think are limited resources, and I think that that's part of what is um, we're being confronted by here in New York with all of the new immigrants being bussed up and being infused into already complex mixture of societies, different levels of society, different levels of economic societies that are now feel like they're competing against each other.
It's true, but there's a number of question marks we have to ask ourselves. One would be, um, why is that happening to the other person who is equally poor? Why isn't that resentment, frustration, anger leashed out against maybe some force or entity that has put this in place? Um, I'm thinking of a neighbor who once complained to me about someone getting food stamps, even though she had a luxury car. And she, the neighbor, didn't have something like that. Why was the neighbor thinking of this poor person with food stamps, even though she had a luxury car? But why did that happen? Why wasn't the neighbor questioning who's getting her to scapegoat someone else who happened to be an Asian? Why wasn't the neighbor questioning, is there an economic policy going on that divides us?
You know, you hit on a very great example because it points to human nature. Um, that person may have received that car from a relative. It might have been, a relative upgraded and gave them that luxury car. We never think about being in the shoes of the other person, and I think that that's part of the separation that takes place. We don't put ourselves in that person's shoes, and so we don't look from where they're looking from. We look from where we're looking from, and of course, it looks like opposition. It looks like you're getting a benefit above and beyond what's available to me. And the truth of the matter is, they both could be possibly eligible for food stamps, and one didn't know about it and just didn't apply, and the other person did apply. So see, so something very simple as that takes place that has people now defensive and separated from quote unquote that the community that they live in. So now they're adversarial, adversarial as opposed to unity thinking, unified thinking.
And as you're describing that, um, I'm thinking about the role of religion and culture.
Hmm.
Uh, in most religions, the ideal is we help one another. Now, what has happened to that? How can we forget that and do what we're talking about? Or how about the role of culture? Most good stories, books, theater, movies, we latch on to the character who, regardless of danger, self-sacrifice for his friends. And why do we forget that when this is happening that you're describing?
Well, I think it points back to what you said earlier, meism. It's about me. And if it's about me, then I don't care how the other person got whatever they've gotten.
But how does
I
that
want it for
happen?
myself.
How does that happen where you've got that going against those ideals of the person's own religion or
Well, I give you a great example. I think social media has a lot to do with it. Um, Instant gratification. We want money. We go to ATM. We go to instant cereal, instant oatmeal, instant celebrity. I go and win one of those contests or the lottery. So I want it and I want it now. And when that is occurring, then the other person who gets it before you is a problem. As opposed to um well, you know what? Why don't I've received something, let me share how I received it with my neighbors, with my community, with my friends. So, a whole different come from, because you're now communicating on a level of sharing and bringing something to the larger body, as opposed to keeping it to yourself and not telling anybody how you got it done.
let's expand that. You're talking about social media, but there's a role even higher on a higher level of how we get our media information.
True, true.
Why is it whenever we see this image of the migrant, we see how people are reacting about the problems of possible criminals? Now, during the civil rights movement, the media was showing Bull Connor's fire hoses
Mhm.
used against protesters. Now, the media might be instead showing the greatness of Bull Connor and never showing what's going on with the protesters or why they're protesting. Maybe what we're talking about is a change in the scope or function of the corporate media.
Hmm. Oh, good point. You're absolutely right, because they're now shying away from well, it seems to me, let me speak for myself. It seems to me that they're shying away from the personal development, human stories. They'll throw that in at the end after they show you all the muck and the mire, and you know this person attacked this person, or this person robbed this store, or so on and so forth. And I think there's so much sensationalism on the ugliness. You know, Case in point, the whole program Survivor. That you have to be ruthless and lie and cheat and steal to win, but you're doing that, quote unquote, for $1 million. So I guess that makes it seems to make it right for some people. But that's what our younger generation is growing up into the mindset of that's how society works, as opposed to other Ubuntu or some of the other um, African um, communities coming together in a council of the elders, so that the elders or the shamans do the same thing, come together and decide and agree amicably amongst themselves, even though they came into the session disagreeing, but but something is bridged.
So as you're describing that, we may want to speak about what is going on in human nature. You mentioned human nature before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in human nature, are we geared to be separatists or are we geared to work with one another?
I, I I personally think it's about working together, because you can get more things done when you work together as opposed to the individual. Now,
Is
uh,
that inherent?
is that a what? Is that
Inherent.
inherent? Excuse me. I think it is dependent on the culture that you're in, because even though I may have individual skills, but I can bring those skills to that particular community to build up that community. And then you've got another set of skills, and the next person's got another set of skills. And so we come together, and now we've got this suite of skills that now we're able to, build a building or construct a road, or whatever it is inside of community. So I think it's a cultural conversation. And if you look at the quote unquote what I'll call older cultures, I think that most of the older cultures have that community bonding um, back principle as a backbone of their culture.
The tribal societies did have this sense. Um, it's mind-boggling in today's world where you would have someone like the tool builder in that society um, being approached by someone else in down, oh, another tent away or another hut away. And the guy comes up and says, I found a different way of applying the tool. Now, why is he sharing the information and not demanding extra rights in food or extra rights? Uh, that's not in the mindset. The mindset is, I found something that'll help everyone.
Exactly.
Now,
Exactly.
that's in many tribal societies, and that's what you're talking about with the culture,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which brings us to Ubuntu.
Yes.
Ubuntu starts by one of the African communities in South Africa responding to the horrors of apartheid. Now, why does that response of Ubuntu, meaning we can only see ourself through others and the community, why does that develop there with that culture compared with, take a look at Sicily, where you have vendettas because of oppression? It's not working with one another, it's protecting just a small group against others.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different culture.
True. True. Yeah. I'm. you know, I'm not. I can't say that I know exactly how that's come to be, but I can tell you that one of the things about vendettas, um, once that cycle starts, it seems almost impossible to stop. Now, that's not to say it's impossible, but they live on, they carried on, and they're carried on by the families or that group that's part of the conflict. So the two parties in that conflict are the ones that carrying the torch. You killed my father, so I'm going to kill your brother, and whatever, back and forth, as opposed to um, wanting, wanting to help each other, wanting to grow together. I think you mentioned it earlier, or maybe even off camera. Agricultural society versus other societies. You have the opportunity to work together. Um, what was your example? You talked about the rice paddy and growing wheat. Very, very different requirements from a community standpoint, because the rice paddy, people are working together. There's one piece of water that they're using to grow the rice, whereas the wheat field, I can go off and be by myself and do that without anybody else. So those two examples, one is a separatist and the other is a communal.
So if human nature was inherently um, meism, we would not see this cultural variation.
No, no.
It's possible then that the aspects that we're talking about with meism or NIMBY comes about because of some cultural um, imposing itself upon the human nature. Maybe the human nature really is inherently to work together.
Well, when I think about it, what comes to mind is the haves and the have-nots. And when you have those differences, you're now the haves want to make sure that they keep their portion or their power. And so built into it, inherent in that style, is to denigrate working together and promote separatism, because they want to keep their power. They want to keep the wealth or the economy in their control. And so I think that you know
Well, 1 second,
yeah,
but uh, then why does it happen in a tribal society where the person who has the most tools doesn't hoard them, but rather distributes them so that they could all benefit in the hunt? Why is it that the shaman doesn't restrict his knowledge of trying to heal or trying to guide the community with a certain shamanistic power? Instead, he gives the information to others in the community.
yeah, it's
We have haves and have nots there too.
true, true. And there's something about working together that I got to say is part of that culture. There's something inside of that culture that promotes the working together and promotes the connectability of it all, as opposed to being separate. And
Well,
yeah,
I think we should take a break and talk more about what's been happening, what has changed if we indeed have part of human nature more addressing the concept of working together. What has changed? Why are these forces changing us into such a meistic type of society? Um, Next show, we'll go into that. Um, and we might even look at some examples that do still work, showing the power of working together.
perfect. So we'll save that for part two. What is the meaning of community? Is it me or is it we?
What would you say in closing?
That there are multiple variables that are playing into this complex conversation, and and we have the opportunity to keep looking to see what really is possible, and where are we going as a society. you know, so we get to look at that.
See you next time.
Okay.